The LTO Show, the premier podcast for leaders in the LTO tape storage community. Each episode dives deep into the business and technology issues that matter most. The LTO Show keeps you informed and inspired. Be part of the future of storage today.
Welcome to the LTO Show, the premier podcast for leaders in the tape and storage industries. I'm your host, Pete Paisley, and each episode, I'll bring you conversations with industry leaders who are contributing in special ways to the tape storage community. Our goal is to deliver fresh insights into the business case for LTO tape storage. And today, I'm excited to welcome back Nathan Thompson, founder and CEO of Spectra. In the late 1990s, Nathan Thompson faced a crossroads. His company was building both tape automation hardware and backup software, competing with everyone in the market. The easy move? Sell the hardware. Keep the high-margin software business that employed much of his team. Instead, Nathan did the opposite. He sold the software division to Sterling Software and bet everything on tape libraries. That decision, choosing focus over diversification, transformed Spectra into the market leader it is today, building the world's largest tape libraries and maintaining customer relationships that span decades. So Nathan, during this time at Western, before the Spectra acquisition, how did you balance the various requirements of the business? Administrative, technical, operations, sales? Were you a madman wearing every hat in the business, doing it all? Or did you feel even then that you had particular strengths and weaknesses in certain areas that you liked to focus on or avoid?
I would have to say that not having a lot of formal management training, I probably did a few more things than I should, yet I was able to hire people that I could put into roles. So I had a very early finance accounting person. I had after designing that memory board I mentioned, I had to spend a lot of time making it work correctly. And I came to realize that although I might have the skills to do it, I might not have the endurance to make something like that work. And so I hired engineers. Several of them are still with the company. Probably went through a few cycles on the sales force, but hired sales managers and salespersons that could lead sales and had manufacturing people that could build these components. I mean, again, we were a pretty small company, but a goodly number of them were able to progress quite a ways. And there's still a number of them sort of in the Boulder community that maybe laugh a little bit, but look back fondly of those times.
Nathan, tell us about how the opportunity to acquire Spectra came up.
Our company at the time, Western Automation, was building add-on memory boards, and we started working on some concepts of controller boards. At the time, there was a company, which probably people have been in the computer industry a long time remember, called Cipher Data Products. And they built instead of a tape drive that was vertical where you put a tape on one side and have it thread to the other, they came up with a pretty neat concept where you would take a tape, and a tape at the time was one of these open reel half-inch tapes, and they're probably between 9 and 12 inches in diameter. And so you would open a door and you would load it in and close the door. It would thread, and then it could read-write the tape. And if I recall correctly, it had an interface which was not an analog interface. It was kind of a PerTech interface. These were used a lot by many computers, often for backup, but also for interchange. And the one mini computer that we had some pretty good depth in was the Texas Instruments 990, but there's probably others that people will recall that were around at the time. This company made interface boards for Texas Instruments, but they also built for the digital equipment VAX and PDP-11s and Data General, Nova, and Eclipse. And the Perkin-Elmer Cipher had bought this company because it was integral for them attaching tape to these mini computers. And the mini computer companies, in many cases OEM their interface board, but there was also a pretty sizable aftermarket. And so we had become aware that this owner of this company that we had known and respected, Spectra Logic, wanted to sell the asset. And Spectra Logic was in Mountain View, and there were probably at the time maybe 25 people with it. And so we approached them, and there were a couple others that approached them, and you never know. It wasn't probably as competitive as it might have seemed at the time, but we might have been the only viable buyer. But we had to go get a bank loan, and this was at the time, I think it was United Bank, and we've had this banking relationship since 2 months after I graduated from college, and I had to go get a loan. I remember I had to go pitch them on this loan.
Right.
They ran me through the coffee grinder on that, and it was good training. But we had to come up with projections and show them that it was worthwhile. Of course, the concern is, are they going to get paid back? And I remember a guy saying, well, what if your projections are completely wrong? And, I probably knew it before, but I responded, well, if we never sell another board, we're going to be okay because there's so many in the field, we'll keep repairing them. And so we acquired the business. We sold some more, not a huge number, probably met our forecasts, but that repair business was extremely strong. And
it was a maintenance business, Nathan. Were they under maintenance or just a repair business that was healthy?
It was a repair business to the maintainers.
Right,
So I had mentioned my wife had run this company in Florida that did TI contract maintenance on Texas Instruments computers, how I met her, but they maintained several hundred, I'm kind of guessing, trying to recall, of these mini computers around Florida and some of the areas and on Air Force bases around the world. And, so one of those boards would fail. People used to talk about it's the size of a pizza box. They were all like the size of a pizza box. It was early bipolar logic and a chip would burn out or something. And so we would repair the boards. Yeah. And so we did that for, it probably had a tail of about 10 years. But probably the most significant thing was we got a brand. There were a series of resellers around the world who sold these that we could have a relationship. And then we started moving our products through that brand.
Nice.
And so we picked up the name Spectra Logic. We reincorporated in Delaware. I mean, it's not like we went out of business or anything, but we took Western Automation, which owns Spectra Logic, and we had the rights to the name and reincorporated as Spectra Logic. And I think it was about 89 or about. So, when I was trying to name this company when I was in college and running it, I went around to my friends and said, I'll buy you a 6-pack of beer, which was probably illegal because I was underage at that point. But if you gave me a good names, and so I got a number of names. I remember Logical System Design, which means LSD, or Mad Dog Systems, or some of these. So, but I'd come up with a name, but I wanted a better name and a better known brand. But it was the same company.
And how long after that did you decide, well, let's get into building tape automation ourselves?
Sure. So we had this concept, and around that time, most tape was this, it was called 800 BPI, 1600 BPI was 9-track tape. We had the concept we saw a local company called Exabyte build a 2.2, I think it was 2.2 gigabyte drive. It's the Exabyte tape drive, and it used a Sony helical scan deck from a camcorder, and that deck/drive set the world on fire for going to tape to, instead of using reels and reels of tape, to a cartridge. We had this idea that we would take that old PerTech interface, and we built a PerTech to SCSI to Exabyte, and we would sell that as a drive to these older mini computers so they could drop, back up their system on a cartridge or a few, instead of, boxes of these tapes. So we went to the market with that. But we had found a little company in Boulder called Colorado Tech Design, who had taken that Exabyte drive, and they had built a very simple, well, I wouldn't say it's simple. They had a robot for it. And so they could put 2 Exabyte drives in this robot, and they had a carousel that would rotate around, and then mechanisms that were mounted on the drives that would pull one of these 8mm Exabyte cartridges into the drive. And we came up with a manufacturing license and to manufacture it. And we came to realize that it was mostly unmanufacturable. So, for instance, there was a shell that they put over the drives, and we came to realize that they would buy a special pot from a local kitchen store, one of these kitchen specialist stores, drill holes in it and screw it on top of the drives. And it wasn't highly repeatable. And so we got this thing. It was a little bit of a pig in the poke, and we had to build a team to go make it viable. And we made it reasonably viable. We sold several hundred, maybe 400 or 500 of them. But in the end, it was really tough. The drives weren't very good. They were hard to replace. But we had a team. We'd built an engineering team that had the mechanical, electronics, and firmware skills to do robots. And so we redid that design entirely. I think I still have one of those old machines, but what didn't even resemble it, and built some of our very first tape libraries, which used Exabyte and Sony AIT, and we did 4mm drives, and we probably sold 10 or 12,000 of those. And so, that sort of accidental near disaster turned into us having the skill set to do these machines. And so we continued on that path and built larger and larger libraries. Now, 100% known as Spectra Logic at this point.
Right.
And expanded from there.
To put it in context, at the time you were launching your first tape automation product, was ATL selling their libraries yet? Wasn't Storage Tech selling their silos at that time? And there were other tape automation products out there, mainly in the mainframe space, I suppose, right?
Yes. So we had, I think it was around 88 or 89, we were kind of looking at this market before we bought this mechanism, or bought the rights to this mechanism. And we started thinking, we're in the controller business, but what, controller's going to become a SCSI interface or SASE interface or something. And it was going to get distilled down to a chip or a few chips that plugged on an HBA. And that was going to favor the chip manufacturer, but probably would not be, the kind of business that would support our company for the long run. So we're trying to think, what is a controller? And we came up with, well, what people are using tape for is backup. Let's write a controller, but as a software product that would control a tape library and control tape drives and tape cartridges. And so we wrote a product called Alexandria. And Alexandria was named after the Library of Egypt. And it was software that would work with tape drives and tape libraries. And we sold and installed and supported a large number of sites that ran this software. The software was unbelievably hard to do, but we got there. And so we would sell them with our libraries, or we would sell them with other libraries. So we had a Odetics ATL. I think we had some of the early digital libraries. I'm not sure if Quantum had taken over DLT. We supported different tape cartridges. We had to buy a storage tech library.
Testing.
And we put the software out around the world, a lot in the US. And we would sell our tape libraries sometime, and we would sell with others. But we came to realize the problem was we were kind of alienating either the other library manufacturers or there were a few other software companies starting up at that time, because we were kind of competing with them all. And we concluded that we needed to sell one or the other. And the easy one at the time was the software. And so we sold that to Sterling Software, and that took about half of our people and over to that division, and we were left with this tape business, tape library business, and we were well down the road on some more sophisticated libraries that would have 120, 200, 650 tapes. So that was a capital infusion for us, and as the entrepreneur and a lot of the kind of key people, it allowed many of us to take some chips off the table with the sale of that software division.
Yeah.
And it put plenty of capital into Spectra Logic. And so we just started progressing further and further into the tape library business. Now,
so Nathan,
others had that concept.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but I see that as a very interesting inflection point for your business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In the sense that
it was
by refocusing the business on a more narrow strategy, it really fueled the long-term success. And do you remember having any challenges with that decision, or was it pretty clear cut for you at the time?
Well, I mean, the decision was we had to sell one or the other or die. And we weren't on the verge of death, but we could draw